This is the story that I wish I would be able to hear when I was a kid, instead of the story of the little girl who collect trash. However, the mentality of injecting fear to motivate the kids still prevails. So I really hope and I wish one day more and more Chinese kids, the kids in Asia, grow up in story of positivity, learning how to deal with failure, how to deal with disaster, rather than how to prepare a disaster and how to prevent a disaster. Hello, this is Tess. Welcome to Delegate Revolt TV, the Entrepreneur's Launchpad. I recently had a conversation with one of my good friends, and I was shocked by what he told me. He is a serial entrepreneur and Stanford MBA, so we had a conversation asking for his advice on my startup business. And for some reason, we talked about how, as I grew up, my mom loved talking to me about if I don't work hard, I will end up collecting trash on the street. And he said, "What's wrong with collecting trash on the street?" And I was like, "Well, you're in Stanford MBA. Are you what's going on?" And he said, "Do you know the guy called Wayne Hegeman? He's a billionaire and he founded a waste management company." So of course he said this, I'm not sure, I think he's like half joking and half serious. But at that point, all I was thinking about is, damn, I wish I can go back to my mom with this example when I was a primary school. You know, I could just hit her back with that. I could turn the situation around. And after the conversation, on my way back home, I realized that I felt very lifted and relaxed, as if a cloud over me over the years have been chased away. It's almost like a burden, a mountain that I was not aware of, that has been looming over my head and was just tipped over because of my friend's casual joke. I'm sure if you grow up with Asian parents or with very driven parents, immigrant parents, you might be like me, you know, you grow up hearing your parents telling stories like, if you don't work hard, if you don't succeed, disaster is gonna happen. And there's actually a pattern in it. It's a conditional clause. If A means if you don't work hard, if you don't get A, if you don't succeed, then B must happen. B means a disaster. You're gonna collect trash on the street. You're gonna regret your whole life. You will be miserable your whole life. You will regret not listening to me when you get older. So as if all of our parents have learned computer programming language. It's such perfect logic. And the whole point is to, I guess, to scare us, to instill fear in us, because fear is a very strong human emotion and as a motivation. And I realized that over the years, the trash collecting girl story has actually a very deep impact on my way of thinking, because I realized that even when I was admitted to the top university in China, when I was admitted to Columbia Business School, when I got a certain level of success in Korea, I always felt like the little girl, the girl who collect trash, was always there, as if everything I do is to not collect trash one day, not to change the world or be the best version of who I can be. And that is why when I hear sometimes the American entrepreneur interview or some talks, when they talk about they are doing this because they want to change the world, because they love it. Of course, I know there is a PR element in it, but I always feel that, wow, how can people in this part of the world are motivated by a completely different thing than the part of the world where I grew up, although those people there are equally driven and successful. And that makes me think, which motivator is stronger and more powerful? When I was in junior high, my mother told me if I don't work hard, I'm gonna end up collecting trash on the street. So after I got into one of the top high school in Shanghai, she had a story version 2.0. She actually said, look at you, you're so slim and you don't really have any muscles. Even the trash collector won't want you. So there really is no way back because that was my only alternative. So I got into one of the best universities in China. Over the time, I would say this kind of parenting method, in one way, it does has its merits, because one thing I feel grateful for my parents is that I have learned how to delay pleasure because of that education method. But on the other way, I realized that motivating by fear is not a long-term strategy, because you can end up burning yourself up compared to people who is doing it because they enjoy it, because they feel energized by it. On the other hand, I realized that the reason why it instills fear is it's training the kids to think in terms of disaster, to turn every little idea, every possibility of failure, immediately leap into the status of disaster. That is a typical pessimistic thinking model. Not really helpful, especially when you decide to be an entrepreneur, because every day the job of an entrepreneur is to make educated risk. And that's why I feel really enlightened by what my friend told me, because it's about, even when you're facing disaster, that you still have the choice to think about it in a different way, to take action, to rebuild it, and to make lemonade out of lemon. So to be honest, ever since I came to United States 10 years ago, I feel every day my environment is injecting positivity in me. I have becoming much more relaxed and positive over time. On average, I notice that people here are more relaxed and positive compared to China, where I grew up. And I wonder why. And I think I found one of the answer recently, because during Thanksgiving I visited my niece. They were 6-year-old, they're 2 girls, and I was reading children's bedtime stories to them. And I realized that these stories are actually teaching them about emotional intelligence, how to understand and express your emotions and feelings. For example, how to make friends at school. When your mother said you might have a new little brother, when you feel confused, what does that mean? And if your best friend, you just had a fight with your best friend in school, what do you do? One of the story I read them was about a little girl who grew up in a village who was one day hit by a storm. So everything was destroyed and every adults were crying and saying, what shall we do? Yet this little girl had a different idea, because she remembered what her father told her. The storm can only hurt us because of the way we see it. And after every storm, there must be a rainbow. This is an important wisdom that many adults, including me, is still learning and practicing until today. Yet this story is so powerful, it's teaching young children to understand how to see the world through the lens of positivity. So this is the story that I wish I would be able to hear when I was a kid, instead of the story of the little girl who collect trash. And actually, parents in China also evolve, especially the current generations like me. However, the mentality of injecting fear to motivate the kids still prevails. So I really hope and I wish one day more and more Chinese kids, the kids in Asia, grow up in story of positivity, learning how to deal with failure, how to deal with disaster, rather than how to prepare a disaster and how to prevent a disaster, how to live in the fear of a disaster. I may do that as a project one day, and I really see this is one of the ways I want to make impact to more people, more kids, to be whoever they want to become in the future. Thanks for watching. See you next time.